Hey everyone, it's Christine and welcome back to Paranormal TV. So today I am doing a video that might be a little bit controversial. I'm going to be talking about Ed and Lorraine Warren, and I'm going to be telling you guys why I believe that their better known cases are highly fabricated, and even maybe their gifts are highly fabricated. I did a ton of research last night, and I had pages upon pages, over 9 pages of information to share with you guys, so it might be a little bit of a longer video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I could do a second part to this video if you guys would like, where I talk about evidence that supports their gifts. I can be completely unbiased for that and set aside my thoughts and focus on finding evidence that supports their claims of the paranormal and supports their cases that they worked on, if you guys would like me to. In fact, when I was doing it, I actually found a couple things that could fall under that video, so let me know if you want part 2 to this. So Ed and Lorraine Warren were a married couple. Ed passed away, I think it was in 2007, I'm not sure. Lorraine Warren is still alive today. Ed and Lorraine Warren were paranormal investigators, authors, and Ed was a self-taught demonologist. Lorraine is clairvoyant and a light trance medium. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is the Warrens Museum. The museum that holds all these haunted / possessed items, including Annabelle and many other famous items that they've collected over the years, and people can come and pay and go into the museum and see the items. Now, the first thing I want to touch on is that there was this video, which the video is linked below with all of my other sources. It's basically a man walks into the museum, there is a priest, and there's also a woman. I don't really know what her job, I can't really remember what the museum is, but they stress to him, do not touch anything, because an attachment can occur, which they believe a spirit might follow them home and cause bad things to happen. Now, on the way to the museum, in this hallway, there are a bunch of Halloween decorations, which I found a little bit strange, but we're gonna kind of connect the dots with that, because that just sounds a little nitpicky, but I promise you it's not. There's always Halloween decorations before you get into the actual museum. It just kind of looks a little strange to have these decorations when you already have creepy haunted items inside. It's pretty crowded. There's a lot of stuff there. So he accidentally touches something, and he tells the priest, I accidentally touched this. And the priest says, it's just decoration. To me, that was really weird, because the decorations were on the way into the museum, so wouldn't that, I think it was a gargoyle, so wouldn't that gargoyle be with the other decorations, not inside the museum full of haunted items or supposed haunted items? So that makes me kind of, wonder how much of that stuff is truly haunted. Another thing is, why create a museum full of these extremely dangerous items that you're so worried about people getting attachments from? You're worried about your customers, your fans. You wouldn't want anything bad happening to them, especially if you're a demonologist and you worked on all these amazing cases. Wouldn't you be a little bit concerned? To me, it seems weird and a little bit money hungry. If the items are in fact that dangerous, you really have to worry about these attachments happening. We're going to be talking about the Amityville horror, which is probably their most notable case. On November 13, 1975, Ronald DeFeo shot and killed 6 family members in his family home in Amityville. In 1975, he was convicted of second-degree murder, and in 1975, the Lutz family had moved into his former home. So the first thing I want to talk to you guys is about the Amityville Horror Conspiracy, which is a book written by Stephen and Roxanne Kaplan. They are a married couple, and Stephen Kaplan is a noted paranormal investigator, a vampirologist, and a parapsychologist. This book is dedicated to their investigation. They investigated the Amityville horror claims for 20 years, not a couple months, not half of a year, not a year, 20 years. That's a large sum of your life to dedicate to one case. So this man was clearly passionate about discovering the truth, and this is basically what he discovered. He kept a diary, and this is his diary published. I believe this is the most popular book dedicated to revealing the hoax of the Amityville horror, or the supposed hoax of the Amityville horror. So this is really interesting. I got this from ABC News. Again, all of my sources are linked down below. William Weber, who was Ronald DeFeo's lawyer, had met up with George and Kathy Lutz. Now, George and Kathy Lutz contacted William Weber. So Weber was already fielding book proposals from anxious publishers who wanted DeFeo's story for themselves because DeFeo was claiming that he was hearing voices in there. So after being contacted by George and Kathy Lutz, William Weber agreed to meet up with them. He met up with them and claimed that they had 4 bottles of wine one evening. And this is a quote, a creative writing session about what kind of thing could go into writing a horror book. Weber was also quoted saying there was this give and take, and toward the end, we were creating ideas. And according to Weber, one idea was giving the gelatin drops the Lutz family found on the floor a demonic explanation. So this is the green slime. This is how he's claiming it was born. Weber also went on to say he never believed the family because they were making a commercial venture, which basically they were. They were trying to come up with a book. The way this ties in with the Warrens is if the haunting was fake, the Warrens' findings were fake. The Warrens also provided no concrete evidence. There was this picture right here, which means this looks just like a little boy. It could be any little boy. It could be a neighborhood kid, one of the Cruz kid. Really, we don't know who this is, but a lot of people claim this could be John DeFeo, who was unfortunately murdered by Ronald. Looking at this picture myself, if I were to give you my opinion, there are similarities. However, I feel like their noses don't look the same. Also, I feel like if you were to capture a picture of a ghost, it wouldn't be so like 3-dimensional and so not transparent. I feel like it would be a little more transparent because it just looks like a real person. So now we are going to be talking about Annabelle, which everyone is so interested in Annabelle, and I have to say Annabelle is interesting, but there's not a lot of evidence to go on. There's no proof that I have found to support the Annabelle story. Let me know if you guys know any proof. I could not find any proof to support the Annabelle story. I can look a little further into this for my second part. If you guys want me to do a second part supporting them, I can look for more. I couldn't find any really proof at all. So there's that. However, I don't know how many of you are fans of the Twilight Zone, but I like the Twilight Zone, and my favorite episode, well, one of my favorite episodes is Living Doll. And Annabelle kind of strikes a lot of resemblance to that episode. If you haven't watched it, I highly suggest go watch it. It's a good episode. This episode aired in 1963, and one of the main characters is named Annabelle. When visitors would come into the museum, Ed Warren would warn them that the last people to mock Annabelle died in a motorcycle accident after leaving. However, there is no real evidence to support that. Granted, it may be easier to be in that state and looking at library information, go to a library and look up newspapers. However, there is no names, dates, nothing to go on. You don't really know much information at all, and no evidence to support this has surfaced. Okay, so now we are going to be talking about The Conjuring. I found some information on a blog called dreamingcasuallypoetry.blogspot.com. It is linked down below. They claim to be an investigative blog and is run by a historian / author. This person is pretty awesome in my opinion. They really care about the people who pass, and they want to make sure that their reputation has not been tarnished, and I thought that was pretty cool. And so they did some research about Bathsheba, and they found no records to support any of the claims that the Warrens or the Perron family had made about Bathsheba. They found nothing that suggested that she murdered her child. She did have 4 children, and 3 of them did die at a young age. However, that was very common back then because there were so many diseases, and the medical technology was not nearly as advanced as it is today. So that was actually, unfortunately, a pretty common scenario. But she was never tried or convicted of murder or even neglect. Also, her children are buried across from her, so if she murdered them, they probably wouldn't bury her across from her children. She never worked on the Arnold estate, and she never cared for a child on that estate. What's interesting about the owner of the blog is that they go on to state that they do have some experiences that could have been paranormal, some weird experiences, but they're not interested in the paranormal aspect, so they're not even letting their mind go there and think about it. They said it could be paranormal, they could have experienced some paranormal things, but they think that Bathsheba was not causing it, and everything that's said about her they believe to be false. So this is interesting. This really has nothing to do with the Warrens, but the current owner sued Warner Brothers for stating the name of the town because unfortunately the owner has had a lot of people coming in trespassing, stalking, and even harassing them, which is terrible. She did a video which I will link down below. It is an hour-long video, but it is her story, her experiences, and I think that it's worth listening to. She claims the parents' experiences were misused and that Carolyn Perrin claims about the haunting were false. So the next case we're going to be talking about is the Snedeker Haunting, also known as the Haunting in Connecticut. So Lorraine Warren says the movie was pretty inaccurate. She seems very passionate about this, and that's interesting because something that Ed said kind of like seemed different than what Lorraine has been saying about it, which we'll get into that. So Lorraine seemed pretty passionate, and she seems to really stick to her story that it is haunted. These people did have these experiences, and she feels really bad for them. So a book was published, which I actually did not know this until researching. It was called In a Dark Place, The Story of a True Haunting. This was written by the Warrens, Carmen Reed, Al Snedeker, and Ray Garton. Garton is a horror novelist, and Garton really has a lot to say about this book and this whole case. So Garton was hired by the Warrens to help shape the Snedeker's alleged experiences into a horror book. I had a very interesting interview with Garton, which Garton quoted that they couldn't keep their stories straight, speaking about the family. I went to Ed with this problem. Oh, they're crazy, he said. You got some of the story. Just use what works and make the rest up. Just make it up and make it scary. In my opinion, if you were trying to tell someone's story, you would want it to be accurate because it is your story and you're honoring them by telling their story. That is just my opinion. Lorraine kind of seemed to share that opinion with kind of being annoyed with the inaccuracy with the movie, but Ed doesn't seem to share that opinion with the book. Also, he claims that they're crazy, which, again, remember that. So Garton claims that Carmen Snedeker was running some kind of illegal interstate lottery scam. The son who was at the center of the claims of the haunting was really never around. Garton never saw him in person. He spoke to him briefly on the phone a couple of times. The son supposedly revealed to Garton that the things that he was experiencing went away after being medicated, and that was not the only thing that went away after being medicated, because the phone conversations went away after he said that. When you hear what Ed said earlier about, oh, they're crazy, and then the son was medicated and his experience went away, it makes me wonder, maybe he had something mental going on. The Snedeker family did say the son had cancer, and that was one of the main plots with the story, was the son had cancer, and they moved into this home that was closer to the hospital for treatments. Now, if he had cancer, some cancers, depending on where the cancer is, how bad it is, it can cause you to hallucinate. So, I mean, maybe the medication that he was on for cancer did help with the hallucinations, but maybe it was a mental thing. Some people believe he didn't even have cancer at all, that he was a drug addict, and they made up the cancer story, which is awful. Right, if he had cancer, that was awful. If he was a drug addict, that was pretty terrible too, but it would be pretty terrible to make up the story in my opinion. But that is kind of speculation, hearsay. That's what people believe, the neighbors believe that, and all. The Warrens had claimed they had this videotape with paranormal evidence on said tape, and Garton inquired about it. He wanted to see it. They claimed that they were going to let him see it, but magically they lost the videotape. So this was on a videotape. This was not on a computer. The computer did not crash. It did not get a virus, and they lost the evidence. They had a videotape, and these people are paranormal investigators. They investigated the Amityville horror. How did they lose the videotape? That to me is crazy. Other residents that have lived in this home claim to have no experiences. Now the Warrens say, well, it was blessed, and that is why. However, to Garton's knowledge, the Catholic Church wants nothing to do with the Warrens, and I really believe this because the Catholic Church does not work with psychics all too much, and the Catholic Church requires a lot of evidence before they go ahead and they exercise anything. So I believe this to be true. And people question the legitimacy of the priests that do work with them. Now, allegedly, the supernatural events only occurred after the landlord had made plans to evict them because several months of unpaid rent went on and the landlord needed his money. A lot of people believe the Snedeker family decided to come up with this story in hopes of getting money. It is suggested that the family had a drug addiction, so if they did have a drug addiction, if they were hallucinating, that could explain why they thought they were having a paranormal experience. And last but not least, we're going to be discussing the Enfield poltergeist, which was the focus for The Conjuring 2. So many of the events that the family claim to have experienced were experienced when no one was there or no one was looking. Not a lot of definitive proof and evidence. There is this picture of Janet supposedly levitating in the air. Now this does look like a girl jumping off the bed to me. This is what I think. This is what many people think. A lot of people who really believe in the Warrens and believe in their cases, they take this as fact that she is levitating. In this picture, Janet is awake, but Ed claims in The Demonologist that he witnessed her sleeping and levitating. He said that she was sound asleep levitating in midair. We can see that she was not sound asleep in this picture. Was this the case? Was he referring to something else? Another time where she supposedly levitated? Janet admitted that she and her sister faked a small percentage of the phenomenon, and to me, like, why fake any of it? If something's going on, why do you need to fake anything? Just try and capture what's going on. I don't understand why you would decide to fake it. So one of the original investigators, his name was Lyon Playfair, he stated on the Dave Schrader's Darkness Radio, they did turn up once at Enfield, meaning the Warrens, and all I could remember was Ed Warren telling me that he can make a lot of money for me out of it. I don't think he was there more than once. I did read somewhere a transcript of a lengthy interview which he's alleged to have with one of the girls, which they couldn't remember giving him. It was describing all sorts of marvelous wonders, which I don't think ever happened. I think he was a complete, well, fill in whatever word you want. Watch The Conjuring 2 at the end of the movie. There is a clip of Ed Warren speaking to the spirit, or the supposed spirit, so that does suggest that he was there. I don't know how long he was there for. That doesn't really prove anything. He could have went there once and this could have been his one encounter with them. I don't really know, but there is that at the end of The Conjuring, so he could have been there longer. Playfair could be bitter about the whole situation. I don't really know, but that is just what Playfair is alleging. There is negative backlash on both Playfair and the Warrens, so you just gotta take what you believe, think who's more credible. I also want to say that they did write a book about exorcising a werewolf spirit out of a man who got violent with police officers. So there's that. That is very weird. Take with that what you will. If you believe that, that's fine. That is everything that I compiled and I felt like was interesting enough to put into this video and discuss. Let me know if you believe the Warrens, if you believe they really have these gifts. Do you believe that they really did all these things that they say they did? Let me know down below. Let me know if you want a part 2 to this, where I find evidence to support their claims and to support their cases, and I will do that if you would like me to. This has been a very interesting video, and it was very interesting to look all this up, so I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.